So we are here to talk about SharePoint and using it for effective knowledge management. Now, not just storing documents and holding things, but actually running a knowledge base out of it with review processes, the whole works. I'm going to I'll start by introducing myself here. My name is Kyle Schneider. I am a knowledge manager for the University of Phoenix. And, I'll bring that up. We do practice KCS methodology. I'm certified in version 6. My whole team is. We're even certified trainers and so on and so forth. But we're a team of 5. We are dedicated to knowledge management. All we do all day, every day, is find ways to advance and push the knowledge management program. And from what I've seen, we're really lucky to have a structure where we have 5 dedicated people to it. So as I said, we do use the KCS process organization-wide. It's the only supported knowledge management methodology. We do still have a little bit of knowledge engineering in some areas that haven't been migrated yet, but we are active in almost 20 departments right now. That means 20 separate knowledge bases, and that is across 4 different platforms. Unfortunately, we generally have to use what we are given, and so far that has been Salesforce and Moxie, 2 big ones, and then my work in SharePoint and my work in Zendesk. Salesforce and Moxie, what they do with knowledge management is what drove the development in SharePoint and Zendesk, taking some of those features, expanding upon it, moving towards it. We are on 4 different platforms. And my history in SharePoint was back in 2006. I was a brand new CAD manager at an architecture firm, and the IT director handed off SharePoint to me, said, "The principal of the firm wants to use this. I don't want anything to do with it. Here you go." I was like, "Oh, that sounds fun." And I think he was the smart one in that situation after years of stress and gray hair from fighting SharePoint over the past decade. But it's been good. I love the challenge it gives with it. So we're just going to go ahead and talk about what was the driving force, what led us to put the effort into developing this knowledge base, how we accomplished it, what we ended up with. I'll show you a few shots of what the end result was, and definitely talk about our lessons learned, what we did wrong, and what were the challenges that I hope to help you avoid, and then what comes next for it. What are we looking to do in the future? So the methodology, I bring that up because the development of this knowledge base was not driven by the requests of a client. The need was from the request of a client. The need to develop something that could be used throughout. But we already had the established process. We knew what the system had to do to support the KCS process, and this is where I kind of butt heads with the common thought in the area is, it's not about the tool, it's not about the tool, it's all about the process. Well, for me, it was about the tool, because if the tool doesn't support the process, people won't use the tool, and the process is pointless. So that's kind of the approach I took on this one. How many of you in here are familiar with KCS, Knowledge Centered Service Methodology? Okay, so that is not very many. All right. So in short, KCS maintains that knowledge is a key asset of the organization. It's dynamic and always changing. We have to capture what we know from the people that know it, and that means the people on the front line doing the job day in and day out. They're the ones that we want the knowledge from, because they're the ones that are going to use it and take ownership over it. It strives to build up out of that collective experience from everyone, so that they don't, so they don't leave the organization and take, 15, 20 years of knowledge. Which there's a lot of numbers from the Consortium for Service Innovation Owners at KCS on that. I believe last time I looked, it was around $500,000 in financial equivalency of knowledge that an employee takes when they leave after 20 years. So we want to capture that information. And then it integrates knowledge in how we do the work. Our methodology is, we don't use the knowledge base to help us with our job. the knowledge base is our job. We search the knowledge base first, even if we know the answer, because it may have changed, especially in our industry. And then we, if it's not found, then we find the answer and create an article that's instantly available to the rest of the organization. So in a typical break-fix environment like tech support, if an issue comes in, they find an answer to it. 5 minutes later, that solution is out to the entire floor instead of a couple days, maybe weeks later, when a group of SMEs goes in and reviews it. And then, content is evolved based on demand as the articles get viewed and get used and linked in some cases. That's what drives the evolving of that article, the review, the formatting, the styling, the validation, and there's very, very minimal, hey, let's predict what the floor is going to need and give them that. It's very reactive, but it's reactive in a very quick sense. So with that, I like doing this slide here to kind of compare the difference between how the flow works in traditional knowledge engineering and how it works with our methodology that we use. So you typically have a group of subject matter experts, and they brainstorm potential problems, come up with solutions to those potential problems. Then they generate the solutions for those, put those in the knowledge base or document store or whatever tool they're using at that point. And then, so when the employees have an issue, they go and search that store of knowledge and solutions developed by those SMEs, and then they essentially hope for the best. They hope they covered everything. They can't predict everything, and they can't be reactive in that sense. So, difference with the methodology we use, knowledge-centered service, is customer contacts employee, says, hey, I've got this question or issue. The employee, first thing they do is searches the KD, and then if that knowledge article is found, they then provide that knowledge back to the customer. And done. Very quick, efficient way of doing it. We know the knowledge is accurate. We know it's right, and it's done. This is where the key comes in. If the knowledge is not found, that employee gathers information from the customer, identifies the solution, combines that into essentially a draft or a work-in-progress article, puts that article into the knowledge base live for the rest of the department to see, and then once it gets used a little bit, then it goes through a reviewer. We call them KCS candidates. They're the level 2 in the review. And they go through and verify it for accuracy, technical accuracy. They do styling and formatting, because across our 4 different knowledge platforms and 20 different knowledge bases, every single one of our articles has the same styling and formatting in all 4 tools, so that any employee searching any knowledge base can look at that article and their eyes know where to go. And formatting and styling doesn't sound like something big, but when you're dealing with, the roughly, I think we have around 15,000 articles in our knowledge bases, and multiple departments, multiple disciplines, it makes it easier for someone from customer support to look at an enrollment article and know how it's structured, know what the bolding means. They can read it quickly without having to, they don't sit there and look through paragraphs, or you have to do Control F to find what they're looking for. So once it goes through an approver, then if it gets enough usage through views or linkage in the ticketing environments, then it flows to a 3rd level review, a publisher. Now they take this article and they determine whether it's good enough for self-service, good enough to go outside that department or outside the company in the case of like tech support or customer support. So they make sure it is absolutely pristine, do another check on it, make sure it looks good, it's accurate, it's complete. And then for us, because we're in a highly regulated industry, we have built in the ability to send it through compliance or legal review. And once it goes through that, then if that's necessary, then it goes out to self-service to try to help with deflection and the people that just don't want to call into the departments. So, with that being said, let me talk about what I experienced right from the beginning. First month on the team, my boss gave the knowledge management team. My boss gave me the task of doing KCS and SharePoint because of my background with SharePoint. And so my first thought is, someone's had to have done it. Someone's had to have done this, or at least gotten close. And so after tons of research, I found out that no, nobody had really done it successfully, especially in KCS. I found all kinds of versions of document management tools and things to do, wikis with inside of it, and forums and things like that, but nothing close to a true knowledge base with review processes and everything else. Found many failures in that. Many people had attempted it, including companies that used to offer third-party solutions. I found 2 different ones that stopped offering it because it was so problematic, which I thought was a little strange. And I actually got told to not do it at all. On more than one occasion, I had talked to a few experts in the forums and things like that, and they said pretty much, don't do it, you'll waste your time. I took that as a challenge, because that's just the way I operate. But one of the things we did see with our quote-unquote KDs that we had within our company was things like this: custom list with each article entered in a rich text field, no search, they had to use Control F to find things within it, no metadata to filter or refine, no reporting, no content maintenance process, no review process. Very rough. I mean, it was just a basic SharePoint list that they were calling knowledge base. So we got approached by our IT operations center. What they needed was a solution that they could use to capture the knowledge of their engineers and their network engineers, support engineers, and help cross-train their team, help minimize the impact of shrinking departments at the time. And they needed to do all this without the ability to spend for a license in Salesforce, our main knowledge base that we use. They couldn't spend for that. They had a shrinking budget. And they didn't have resources for internal development. They didn't have it, and the rest of our IT department didn't have resources for internal development. So that's when we decided to go on the SharePoint platform. Everybody has SharePoint, and you can give it to everybody in the company without costing it anymore on licensing or things like that. So these were the technical requirements that we had, again, that were not driven by the customer, but driven by the methodology. We needed, excellent searching with refining, which I think is pretty general. Everybody needs that, as many of the topics today have been about. We needed frontline, in-the-moment creation for the user to be able to create that article. Sorry about that. User to be able to create that article right there when they get the answer, without having to go, wait for someone to get back to them. We need to be able to provide and track feedback on articles. So if the user's looking at that article and sees that it's changed or different, step 5 is wrong, they need to be able to submit feedback on that in a tracked manner without just directly editing the article. So we have that requirement, and then they just needed to be able to go through a review process to be verified, validated, formatted by licensed reviewers. And we also needed that, compliance and legal review piece. And then we needed to be able to track who was viewing what articles and when, so we know which articles are popular, which ones aren't, which ones can be archived so they're not gunking up the search, and things along those lines. And then also archive those outdated articles. With us, we have a lot of seasonal articles, like during tax time, the 1098T information is big. During enrollment, big enrollment season. So we have articles that aren't valid year-round. So we don't want those to show up in the search results for someone if it's not going to be relevant. So we have the process to archive them off. And then with the case, especially with the case of our IT departments, they wanted to be able to have the developers and product owners be able to write content in their knowledge base. Even though they don't have their own knowledge base or use knowledge, they wanted them to be able to contribute it instead of them sending them an email, someone taking that email, modifying it and hoping that they get the next email before it's too late to update it. So they take ownership of those individual articles and contribute. And then obviously permissions, controlling sharing at different levels. Because our SharePoint environment is 100% internal, we don't share anything public. That's one of our other knowledge bases that goes public. We had the internal for the team and department. We had external for the collaborators that we talked about, and people that consume their knowledge outside their department. And then we have public, which we are using that term for company-wide consumption. So that would be more for deflection. All right, so our approach to this. Did we reinvent the wheel? I think, in a sense, we invented the wheel, because this wheel really didn't exist. It was still a square block attached to a rock, so it didn't really work. So the decision to do this from the ground up in-house was basically because there was no fit-for-purpose solution that would have worked for us. We developed our own. I decided that there was going to be no programmatic solutions, no code, none of that stuff, because I've seen how bad that gets when you start upgrading or migrating or something changes, and it's just a nightmare to maintain. So this was strictly configuration with just a few JavaScripts to automate and make things a little prettier and smoother for the user. We did this all in SharePoint 2013 on premise. I'm trying to figure out a way to get this to go into online, because the SharePoint team's been pushing me. We started with an out-of-the-box wiki site template, enabled publishing features on that, and that's basically it as far as what we based it off of. And then the advantage I found with doing this from the ground up without trying to take something else and make it work was we had complete control over how it was built. We built it specifically for doing KCS within our company, within our departments, and that allowed us to create features that allowed us to make the stuff to operate with the workflows that we go in and the processes we do. It's things like our compliance and legal review, having that branch on everything. And then, so we partnered with the SharePoint tech team to handle provisioning, content hubs, server-side work. I'm not in that kind of a role anymore, so that's I had to work with them. And it was just myself and one other guy, Tyler, one of my good friends now. He was a corporate web developer on the SharePoint team, and he helped me do a lot of the page layouts and scripting, and was the one to smack my hand when I was going against company standards. That was he kind of kept me in line there. And then we had a few help us resources along the way. There was a SharePoint engineer that helped me when I got stuck in some of the workflows. So what we ended up with was the KD site at the core. And we have our pages library, which contains all the KD articles. We have a feedback library. We have an article usefulness library. We have announcements for the department. We have analytics within it for the individual user tracking. And then we also have our archives. Now, those are the main components of that wheel. And then off to the side, we have the normal site assets, but we also have the KCS review tasks that are piped into a dashboard. And then we have the documents that exist for the KD article. So we have a strict no attachments policy. You do not attach a document to a KD article, because then that document lives with that KD article. Well, that document isn't being updated by that KD article. That document is updated by a user. And unless that user knows that it's in that KD article, they're not going to go update it. And in the worst scenario, you have 15 different articles containing that document. So we don't allow them to attach documents to any of the knowledge bases. We have them put them on central locations, like a SharePoint document library or something like that, where they can be collaborated on, and no matter how many times they're updated, the KD article will always have the most recent version of that document. So now the real question is, how does it look? How did this come out? This is so the IT Operations Center that started this. Because of some of the content in their articles, I didn't get the go-ahead to use screenshots from their environment in this. I am using one from our corporate applications department. They're an application support team, and they were able to give me the go-ahead to use some of their content. So you'll see some differences in the name. But this is our site homepage here. Let me get off to the side a little bit. So you can see there's that department announcements thing we were talking about. We have the ability to provide feedback on the site. Now, every site, knowledge-based site that we have across all platforms, all departments, has at least one knowledge domain expert, or KDE. They are the one responsible for the health and content of that site. My team does not manage any of the content within the site. That's the responsibility of the department because they own their content. We're not experts in all the fields, so we can't determine what's good, bad, or otherwise. So we have the KDE right there on the home page. Some departments have multiple KDEs to split up the workload. We have the ability to search the KDE right there. Then we do our latest articles, popular articles, pretty standard SharePoint additions. But one of the cool things about this search, and with the search in SharePoint in general, on our IT Operations Center site, they actually have the ability to search these guys as KDE as well. So right there on there, because they deal with a lot of stuff that these guys have. So they can go right to their homepage and search either their KDE, the corporate applications KDE, or both. And it tells them clearly which one they're looking at. And all that content is typed right into their search results. Beyond that, we have our advanced search page. This is where the search results send to. So we built this page ourselves. We didn't like the refiners that were out of the box on SharePoint. They just didn't do any good for what we did. Time frame and author didn't really do anything for these departments. So we have our categories over here, which come from a term store, a site term store that the department manages. And those are the categories that are available under the metadata, which you'll see in a second, that allows them to, give the article taxonomy. And then keywords, we did this one really simple. We just use an enterprise keywords system for it. The keywords box that comes up, as they're typing it in, it pops down with all the keywords that are been used on any article in the enterprise. And they just it automatically adds to it, or they select the one that's already been there. It just seemed the simplest way to manage that without having to manage an actual database of keywords, because that seemed nightmarish at the least. And then in the results itself, this will fill up here with the search results, and it gives them it highlights the search term matches like you see in normal KDEs, and then it gives the article URL right underneath that. With the title being the heading there, and we don't have it show the preview, the image on the left. One, it reduced the number of results we could get per page, and two, for these type of things, it was irrelevant. It didn't improve the flow or anything. And then this is the actual article page. This is what one of the articles looks like in the knowledge base. So. We've got quite a few components here. You've got your main body of the article. This one is a simp and pause resolution template. We also have a question and answer template. And these are just custom page layouts. Those are the only two options they get when they go to create a new article. And then actually below this, for this group, we added an application farm and server dependencies because that was important to them. That was something they needed to know is if working with this system, what else did that impact? And then we have the additional information, which contains links to other articles, links to resource documentation elsewhere, that type of thing. So everything you see in green is the standard metadata that exists on all of our KD articles across all the knowledge bases. That's the stuff that's not optional. That's the stuff that we've decided as an organization that needs to be there. Things like this, the article number, the approval status, those cannot be modified by anybody. Those are entirely set by the workflow, and they cannot be changed. The only way for this status to go from not confirmed to confirmed to approve, our 3 levels of review, is the workflow sets it to that. And that makes sure that nobody can either accidentally or intentionally change that status, because that is partially what determines the trust in the article. Because these are created on demand and there's articles that are there that haven't been validated yet, that is what helps determine the trust. And then the compliance one, that's, as I mentioned before, if this is a compliance or legal or misrepresentation related topic, it has to go through review by someone outside of that department. It goes to our ethics and compliance and legal departments. So the workflow, if this is flagged, it will actually send it off to them. they will come into this knowledge base and review it and determine whether or not it is good to go, needs changes, needs links, whatever it may be. And then this is the audience. Again, that pertains back to those 3 different layers, the internal, external, or public. This one is set to external, so that means that other departments this group works with can search their KDE, and this article will come up so that they can take advantage of it and hopefully deflect some calls or some tickets to this group. And then we have our categories, the term store that we mentioned there. And the keyword database there. So this is how we do feedback on the article, and this is actually a feature I'm quite proud of. It took us a little bit to figure this one out. So we didn't want people to be able to directly edit. We could have sent a workflow off every time an article was edited, but it would just seem like a lot of management work just to be able to figure out what it was that was changed. So we created this little box here. This is just the new form.aspx embedded and stripped down so that all it contains is this field, which is a multi-line text field that expands, and then the submit button. So when you hit submit, it takes that information, puts it to the feedback list, and then it actually shows up right here where you see that text. That feedback shows up right there. So when the next person comes up and sees this article, they can see that someone thought step 2 or 3, or this name was different, or this contact number was wrong. They can see that before they read it. Now, we used to have it at the bottom of the article, and as I'm sure you all know, nobody ever goes to the bottom of the article. They don't want to read that far. They think they got it all, so it was very irrelevant by then because nobody was reading it. So we moved it right up to the top, so it's nice and obnoxious, so they see right from the beginning that it is there. And then this is another cool little feature here. So my boss, he didn't like the thumbs up, thumbs down, yes, no, for was this article useful, because it doesn't really tell you anything other than, yeah, it was useful. Well, if it wasn't useful, why not? So we turn this into a little drop down here that just says, yes, it's useful if it is. Great, that goes off. That sits in the list for reports. This again all writes to another list. And then if it's not useful, why wasn't it? So it's inaccurate, incomplete, confusing, outdated, wasn't what I was looking for, which, believe it or not, people do say it wasn't useful because it wasn't what they were looking for. I'm like, just move on to the next article, but they don't do that. And then this one here, the No Ready for Archive, was really important, especially with this group in our IT Operations Center, because their servers change, their platforms change, the vendors change, everything changes. And when they change over things like that, those articles become irrelevant, and they actually have a high number of archives. And so what was happening was I should probably say first, any of the no options send off a notification to the KDE to review that article, to either make it more findable or refine it or do something to improve it so it doesn't get rated no again. But this one here, the Ready for Archive, when multiple people were submitting that for the same article. So that's when I added this little guy up here marked for archive. So if this is set to no, it creates a task for the KDE to actually review the article and determine whether it gets archived or not. And then it puts in big red bold text here, yes. So that the next person that comes to that article, just like the feedback, they can see, hey, look, someone already said this article should be archived. It's probably irrelevant. Either don't waste your time reading it, or just, be cautious if you do decide to follow it, because it might not be good anymore. So that was, and the reporting we've gotten out of that is incredible. It's really allowed the departments and the KDEs to be able to refine their knowledge to be more usable, more desirable to come across. And then, the ones that were in bold here, those are 3 of the fields that were requested specifically by this group. Skill level, and that was the beautiful thing about doing this in SharePoint, is it's so easy to customize, to do this or tweak it a little bit for someone else. So skill level was simply, hey, if you're a Linux admin and this is a Windows article, what can you do it? And if it's at anyone, yeah, anybody on the floor can do it. That goes all the way up to 4, which is restricted, meaning no, this has to be your function to be able to do this. So that because they wanted to do cross-training, but they didn't want people messing around on servers or systems they weren't familiar with if they weren't, skilled in those. And then service level, that was specific to this group. They wanted to know if that service that the article is about, what's the service level on it, so they know just quickly, right at a glance, what they have to focus on for completing that. And then the urgency, that was one unique to this group. I never quite understood why they wanted it, but it sounded good and it came from their manager, so I put it on there because they seem to really need it and want it, so we went for it. But yeah, so that, the nice thing about this is we can tweak them to be different for everybody, for every group to their needs. I'm finishing a build out right now for a marketing compliance group, way different than the IT groups it's in right now, and it's nice because it's going to work just as well for them because of a few tweaks and changes. All right, so data. Now this has kind of been a little bit of a pain point. As we know in SharePoint, all the data is there. As much data as you want, every field you put in, every view you create will give you any and all data related to that. The challenging part comes when it comes to reading and compiling and making that data presentable and make sense. So the way we've done it right now is we have a set of Excel data connection files that we create for each group, and those are housed on wherever they want to house them, because they're responsible for reporting in their knowledge bases. And they just open it up for the list, and it has the charts and graphs that automatically refresh and populate and have all the new data. They take the snapshots, send it off to their leadership, and hopefully they're happy. And then beyond that, it's just traditional Excel data manipulation if they want anything more. It's like it says here, it's not pretty, but it works. Everything is set up for doing more advanced things, including Performance Point and BI. Every site has all those features enabled, has the foundation there. I've even got the BI sites stood up for doing the reporting. It's just when our SharePoint team got cut down, we lost our BI experts, and that is one area of SharePoint I've never played with. So it's a matter of having the time to go in and build those out. But the nice thing is the framework is already there. So when they do get built, all the way back to 2.5 years ago when we built this, we'll have all the data. Because thankfully that was something that I had planned for from the beginning. And then, so this is instead of by the full date timestamp that SharePoint loves to give. And then we go down to article number, then we expand that, and we can see the individual users that viewed that article, what day it was, the link to the article, and then click into it for more information from there. This is really good for content health and maintenance. So it allows the KDE to go in there and say, hey, what articles are, we've got 1,200 articles in our KDE right now. Can any of these be slimmed down? And that allows them to determine that. So it allows them to see that, okay, this article in the past 3 months has only gotten 2 views. And then they'll look and see if those views were anything relevant to any issues they have, and then they'll know, okay, I can archive this one and make sure it's not, making the search results cloudy. And then beyond that, we can even track by employees, so we know their participation in the knowledge base, whether or not they're using it. You can see the numbers here can vary quite a bit from one person to the next. The top guy in the last 180 days only had 26 views, and this guy here, Joe Techman, he had 201 views in the last 180 days. And then it breaks down into the articles they viewed, the dates they viewed them on, all of that information. So you can see who's actually participating in your knowledge program, reward them for their participation or give them praise, like they've talked about earlier today, or know who's not and find out why they're not. If they're just stubborn and trying to hoard their knowledge so that they're still relevant, or whatever the situation may be, you can start digging deeper into that. And we are almost done here. So this is some of the challenges and obstacles that we encountered. The stuff that caused a little bit of the gray hair on the side of my head. This is the biggest thing was the workflow. So obviously in a site like this, there are a lot of big, complex workflows. The main workflow that deals with article creation, putting it through all the steps, including compliance review and everything else, has, I believe it was 8 stages. Each stage has about 4 to 5 steps, and each step has about 4 to 5 actions. And it's doing everything from REST API calls to get information from other lists. It's going all over, or not REST API, REST web service calls to get information from other places that we need that we need to track and record. I had to get very creative for a lot of things. Something as simple as taking the check-in comments from the latest update to the article and putting that into the task for the next level of review so they don't have to go and look at version history and check-in comments to see it. They see it right there in their task for the next level. That required a bit of tricky work there. The feedback that we went over, figuring out how to get that feedback quickly, have it show up on the article, and have it be able to be processed and applied to the article. And also, when that feedback is processed, when they do finally process it, it disappears from the top of the article. It's closed out, it disappears, and it doesn't show up anymore. So that because it's already been applied or rejected. And then tracking the usage, the user analytics one that we were talking about, that really all it took was a JavaScript. But it took a lot to figure out that that's what we needed to do. We were wrapping our heads for at least a week or two on that one, trying to figure out how to track that. And what the best part about that was, it took us about a week or two to figure it out. In one of our other knowledge platforms, our main one, we had to hire a third-party developer, spend a ton of money, and waited over a year to get user tracking. And me and one other guy who claimed to be SharePoint guys get to figure it out in 2 weeks because SharePoint allows you to do that. They don't require these insane development efforts as long as you are stubborn enough to not give up. And then the no examples, nowhere really to guide us other than don't do it, run. We spent a few years doing this and it failed. We spent X amount of dollars doing this, so that was a little challenging. Thankfully, I am one of those stubborn ones that doesn't give up, that just says, oh, well, that's a challenge. And then our shrinking organization, we were going through a buyout at the time, and they were restructuring, reorganizing, trimming down. Part of that reorg going on, which it was losing half of our SharePoint team, a little more than half of our SharePoint team, including the developer, who was the only one I could go to for help when I got stuck. So that made it, and since then that has been challenging as they have not replaced him. And then, so biggest obstacle, SharePoint. That was just dealing with, it's lovely, confusing error messages and workflows, and just the normal everyday stuff that makes you want to scream. That was good, but that was very very trying. But in the end, it's deploying is our biggest thing right now, making that reproducible for other departments. And so our current process is provision site, copy content and structure, install and activate workflows, update all 13 workflows, update page layout, update scripts. All this is manual. It's a minimum of 20 work hours, which in SharePoint world that turns into 30, 40 very easily. So it's a long process right now to deploy a new one. And mainly just because we don't have the development resources available right now to package this as a service offering or anything. All right, so we're at the end here. This is what our successes so far have been and what's next. Successful implementations. Our IT Operations Center been running for over 2 years now. They have over 1,000 live active articles, and they've had over 17,000 views in the past year just from their 45 employees, which is astronomical. It's more than most of our other knowledge bases for much bigger user sets. So that they have been our poster child of successful knowledge management. And then our corporate applications, they've been live for 1 year. They're a break fix support environment with 10 people. They have roughly 400 articles right now, and it has allowed them to continue operating with an ever-shrinking department. In fact, when they came to us for help, they had just lost 2/3 of their team. And the director was like, I don't know what to do. These guys can't do that work, so we got to figure it out. And then the marketing compliance one that I'm building right now, they have no existing KB, deals almost exclusively with legal sensitive content, which thankfully SharePoint allows you to manage really nicely as long as you don't do item level permissions. And then only form of info prior to that was a massive Word document. A 149-page Word document was their knowledge base. It was painful. I didn't even want to look at it. So funny thing is, we had talked about our SharePoint knowledge base to JLL, the real estate company, and after the Consortium for Service Innovation had referred them to us because we had done SharePoint for KCS, and then we're about a year later, we're at one of the summits, and they were presenting, and they had an awfully familiar looking knowledge base that they had built in SharePoint, and we didn't think we made that big of an impact on them, but we did, and they ended up liking it so much. From talks later, they didn't go as far as we went, but it was kind of cool to see. I kind of count that as a win, that they thought it was nice enough to go and take their own swing at it. And then the future, obviously Performance Point and BI, like I was talking about, we need to be able to get that more robust automated reporting. And packaging this up as a service offering. We're at a minimum trying to get it packaged within our own environment, but we would really like to make it more automated. So we can. I've already gone as far as all the variables and values in the workflow that are unique for each site all come from a list now. So a SharePoint list. So you go through and you fill out all the variables, and then the workflow is automatically updated with them every time it runs. So that has taken a lot of time out of it. And then this is my goal personally, is to get this in the marketplace as an app, so that someone can just download it, install it, and it's good to go after a little bit of configuration. Right now, this is only on-premise 2013. I'm working to get it into SharePoint Online, Office 365. SharePoint team keeps pushing me towards that because they want to migrate, and I keep telling them it's not possible just because I don't have the time to work on it right now. But that's the end. Any questions for me? Yes, go ahead.
In your feedback box, and people can give it yes or a variety of no type of answers.
Yes.
When you're tracking those categories, did they drive you towards certain adjustments with the article? I mean, somebody says they just found the article and it wasn't helpful. I mean, maybe they just, picked a bad search term or something like that. How did y'all make adjustments based off of those no feedback in a way that was meaningful, so you didn't, some people search better than others, more effectively?
Right. So because that creates a review item for the KDE, the one responsible within that department for their knowledge, they look at the task, they look at the item, they see who submitted it, they can go and talk to them, it's their peer, they can see why they said it that way, and really it's up to them because they own that content. So my knowledge management team does not own the content, they own it. So each department does it a little bit differently on how they actually process that, whether they make changes or do training or whatever it is.
So if somebody said, no, it's confusing, then the content owner would go see that person and say, hey, why?
Yes, and say, well, we had originally an option to fill in your own text.
Right.
That was a bad idea. That was a very bad idea. We ended up with completely useless data because unless you were going through and filling it out, and then people started submitting feedback through there, and so we took that away and just gave them the options there, and then follow up later.
Thanks.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what it took to get the employees to start submitting articles and get them into the authoring flow?
So the biggest part of that with the program in general was executive buy-in. I've heard it a couple times at this conference with just knowledge management in general, but especially for KCS. The way we present it is it's not, like I said, it's not something you use to do your job. It is the way you do your job. So when it's given and it's explained as this is how you do your job now. And obviously we have the old adage, no, if I'm going to give in my information, you're just going to replace me with someone cheaper, especially in the high-level IT departments like our operations center. You've got senior engineers and guys that are very skilled and very well paid, and they don't want to give up their information thinking that they'll be replaced. But yeah, it all came, it's an entire program that we had been running already. When I started development on this, we had already been running for 3.5, almost 4 years with KCS in general. We had been running it mainstream across most of the organization for 2 years already. So it was really just repeating the process we had in the other departments with that buy-in and that communication.
Yeah, so I know there are other questions, but I'm just going to ask maybe if you step down, Kyle, and do it in the audience just so we can swap speakers.
Yes.
But thanks again. Next up, we have another case study from Intel. Found this to be very interesting. It's about lean and agile and SharePoint, which is our